At the stroke of midnight, right when the chandeliers dimmed for the countdown and 1,000 champagne flutes were raised in the air, a scream cracked through the ballroom like a gunshot. Not a polite gasp, not a startled shriek, a full, raw animal panic. "My God, we're finished!" It was my brother's voice. Chase Lawson, golden boy of the Lawson pharmaceutical empire, favorite child, heir apparent, and professional disappointment to everyone who wasn't blind. The orchestra faltered. The crowd hushed. A ripple shot through the glittering sea of gowns and tuxedos just as my mother's glass slipped from her fingers and shattered across the Italian marble. She collapsed next. Her diamond necklace struck the floor with a dull thud, and the world seemed to tilt with her. My father didn't catch her. He couldn't move. He stood frozen in the middle of the stage, spotlights painting his face pale white, his hand gripping the edge of the podium so hard the wood creaked. And then the canvas covering the mysterious velvet box, Lot 29, fell away. Gasps. Phones lifted. A cold wind might as well have swept through the ballroom, even though we were inside the Chicago Skyline Grand Hall, insulated with millions of dollars of soundproofing and climate control. My father whispered, barely audible to the people closest to him. "No, no, Harper, what did you do?" 30 seconds earlier, he'd been screaming at me through the phone, his voice cracking with genuine fear. "Harper, where the hell are you?" "You better not, Harper, I swear to God." I answered him calmly, while leaning back on the sofa of the lakeside villa I'd rented for my chosen family. "Did the family enjoy my gift?" Silence. Then chaos. I hung up, slid my phone face down on the teak coffee table, and stepped outside onto the frozen balcony. Fireworks exploded over Lake Michigan in cascading gold and violet, painting the water with a trembling sheen. For the first time in a long time, I felt no fear, no shaking hands, no tightening throat, no craving to explain myself, just a strange, steady stillness. "My name is Harper Lawson," I whispered to no one. "And tonight is the night the people who tried to erase me finally learn I was watching the whole time." Below me, the lake cracked with the shifting ice. Behind me, laughter floated out from the villa where my friends were pouring more champagne. And 90 blocks south, the Lawson Empire began to crumble in front of 600 of the most influential people in the Midwest. Exactly as planned. But the truth is none of this started tonight. It didn't start with the velvet box, or the auctioneer opening the envelope, or my mother collapsing like dead weight in a gold gown. It started 10 days earlier, when my mother sent me a text message unlike anything she had said to me in years. A message I should never have trusted. If you've ever had a family who treated you like a nuisance for choosing your own path, if you've ever been told you don't belong at your own table, if you've ever been underestimated so deeply you became invisible, stay. Because what happened next? Even Hollywood couldn't have scripted it better. 10 days before the gala, my mother's text sat unanswered on my phone while I welded the base of a steel sculpture in my Milwaukee studio. The sparks snapped against the cold air, brilliant orange streaks that briefly lit the concrete walls before dissolving into darkness. Her message glowed in the corner of my screen. "Come home early this year, Harper. We need you. It's important." My mother had never used the word need before. Not with me. Not even when she had the migraines that forced her into dark rooms. Not even when my brother nearly drove the family company into regulatory hell last year, and she desperately needed support. No, my presence was always optional. A courtesy. A spare piece of furniture they didn't know where to put. I stared at the message for a long time, sparks sizzling around my boots. Maybe this was an olive branch. Maybe this was her admitting she'd been harsh. Maybe, after 30 years of being the black sheep, the disappointment, the embarrassment, maybe she was finally ready to try. My studio smelled like heat and metal, like the spark of something being born from fire. It was the only place where I was wanted. The only place I wasn't judged for preferring steel to spreadsheets. I turned off the torch. Silence. I wiped the soot from my gloves, picked up the small iron sculpture I'd been crafting for my father, 3 curved arcs that met in the center like interlocking ribs, and tucked it carefully into my travel case. Maybe I was stupid. Maybe I was desperate. Maybe some part of me refused to fully give up on the idea of family. Either way, I packed. The drive from Milwaukee to Chicago was all gray sky and snow-streaked highway. Bare trees blurred by as I crossed the state line, and by the time the skyline appeared in the distance, a thick knot of nostalgia and dread had taken root in my chest. The Lawson estate in Winnetka rose like a fortress against the winter sky. White stone walls, black shutters, an iron gate with the Lawson crest welded into it. It looked exactly as I remembered. Grand, cold, unwelcoming. The moment I stepped inside, the heat hit me like a wall, scented with white lilies and expensive perfume. The foyer glittered with crystal lights and silver garlands. Staff ran in every direction carrying boxes, arranging floral pillars, polishing banisters. My mother's voice floated from the living room. "Careful with those! They go on the main donor table." Then she appeared, dressed in an ivory cashmere set, hair glossy, face perfectly expressionless until she saw me. "Harper, you're early." She didn't hug me, of course not. She scanned me up and down like a doctor evaluating a problem patient. "You brought luggage." I assumed I'd stay a few days. Her lips tightened. "Your room is being used as the product display suite for Chase's new biotech line. You can take the nanny suite." I swallowed. "Right, sure." She was already turning away when I said, "I brought something for Dad." She paused. Her eyes barely flicked toward the sculpture case in my hands. "Oh, how thoughtful. He's in his study. Try not to interrupt for long. There's a lot of planning happening." Planning, always something more important than me. I shouldn't have walked toward the study. I shouldn't have tried. But I had hope clutched to my chest like a fragile bird. The closer I got to the double mahogany doors, the more voices I heard. Low, serious, familiar, my father, my brother. A man I didn't recognize. My mother's clipped tone, papers shuffling. I raised my hand to knock, stopped. Because my father's voice cut through the crack in the door. "She doesn't need her share." She never appreciated it anyway. A cold sheet of dread slid down my spine. Chase laughed, a soft, smug sound. "She makes what, 40 grand a year? She won't fight this. She can't afford to." My mother chimed in. "We'll present it during the live gala in front of the donors. Once she signs, it's done. No messy conversations." The stranger cleared his throat. "The amendments have already been notarized, removing Harper from the trust completely. The offshore accounts are protected under the new shell corporations." My pulse hammered so loud I felt it in my teeth. Trust amendments, offshore accounts, removing me completely. My father spoke again, voice low. "We need her signature for legality. Once she signs the presentation papers, we can shift the rest of the funds, quietly." The advisor added. "And the earlier clinical trial discrepancies. We can finalize those under the new corporate audit." Clinical trial discrepancies, my father's biggest secret, the one I knew about, the one I had proof of. My mouth went dry. "And if she refuses?" my mother asked. Chase snorted. "She won't. She wants to belong. She'll sign anything if we pretend it's for her own good." They laughed. I stepped back so hard my shoulder hit the wall. The sculpture case slipped from my hand. A soft thud, silence inside the room. A chair scraped, footsteps. Panic seized my throat. I grabbed the case, turned, and fled down the hallway. The house blurred. The staff voices blended together. My boots echoed too loudly on the marble floor. I reached the front door and pushed it open with shaking hands. The cold slapped me in the face, snow stinging, wind howling. My breath came in sharp bursts. I didn't look back, not at the life crumbling behind me, not at the people who had just decided I didn't deserve my own bloodline. Not at the family who ridiculed me for years and was now stealing the last thing they could. I got in my car, turned the key, and drove. Faster than I should have. Farther than I meant to. When I finally pulled over at a lakeside turnout, the world was dark and silent except for the cracking ice on the water. And for the first time in months, I cried. Not weak tears. Not quiet embarrassment. Sobs that tore through the cold air and fogged the windshield. Heavy, shaking sobs that burned through years of trying to be enough. When I could finally breathe, I called one person. Juno. She answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. "Harper, what happened?" "They're cutting me out," I whispered. "Completely, trust, inheritance, everything. And they're planning to force me to sign in public." Silence. Then. "You still have the files, right?" I blinked at the frozen lake. Yes, her voice hardened. Then come home, we finish this. I closed my eyes. 10 days, I whispered. I have 10 days to expose them. No, she corrected softly. You have 10 days to take your life back. Something in me straightened. Something long bent finally snapped into place. I put the car in gear and drove toward the beginning of the end. I reached my studio at 1:47 a.m. The warehouse district was pitch dark except for the flickering amber street lamps, the kind that made the empty alleys look like scenes from a noir film. Snow drifted sideways in slow, ghostly sheets. My breath fogged the air as I punched in the keypad code and rolled the metal door up. The warmth hit me instantly, not heat, but familiarity. The smell of forged steel. The dull hum of the space heater I'd forgotten to turn off. The sight of half-finished sculptures standing like silent sentinels. This was home, not that mansion, not the Lawson estate, not those people. Here, everything made sense. I closed the door behind me, wiped my face with shaking hands, and walked straight to the far corner. The office nook where my industrial safe sat tucked behind crates of metal sheets. My fingers hesitated over the dial for a moment, not because I couldn't remember the combination, but because once I opened that safe, there was no going back. No pretending, no forgiving, no hoping they would change. This would be war. I took a breath, exhaled, and turned the dial. Click. The door swung open. Inside were the documents I'd been secretly collecting for 2 years, not deliberately at first. It started when I stumbled across a misfiled clinical trial form during my old summer internship at Lawson Pharmaceuticals. A file that should have shown stable trial results instead revealed 3 severe patient reactions, reactions that magically disappeared in the published report. I told myself it was a mistake, a clerical oversight. But the more I looked, the more ghosts I found, paper trails that never should have existed, gaps in financial statements, patents missing verification signatures, duplicated digital timestamps. By the time I realized the scope of what I'd uncovered, it was too late. I was in too deep. And the Lawson machine, it didn't tolerate loose ends. That's when I hired the whistleblower attorney. Quietly, anonymously, through a burner email. Every suspicious file, every questionable memo, every off-book transaction, I collected them, downloaded them, encrypted them, saved copies onto 3 separate drives, because deep down I'd always known this moment would come. The safe was stacked with 6 thick folders, labeled in my handwriting. Patent fraud, clinical trial concealment, shareholder manipulation, trust amendments, offshore transfers, internal emails. I pulled them all out and spread them across my metal workbench. The cold steel surface made everything feel heavier, more real. My laptop booted up with a soft chime, and in its glow, the truth cast long shadows across the studio floor. I worked through the night, cross-referencing documents, marking discrepancies, organizing dates, highlighting the most damning emails. The kind that said, "Destroy this copy. No one sees this. We do not involve Harper. Amend the trust quietly. Finalize signature replication. Move remaining assets offshore before Cone." Every sentence was a nail in their coffin. Every spreadsheet was a blade. Every forged signature, mine more often than not, was another cut I hadn't known I'd bled. By sunrise, the workbench was covered in papers, highlighters, USB drives, and a steaming mug of burnt coffee. But the most important step was still ahead. The box. I stood and crossed the studio to my forge. My tools hung neatly on the wall. Hammers, chisels, punches. The torches lined up in perfect order. Sheets of raw steel leaned against the far corner, cold and ready to be shaped. I selected a slab of blackened metal, clamped it onto my anvil, lit the torch, and let the flame roar to life. The metal softened under the heat, glowing orange, then white-hot, until it bent to the shape I demanded. A box. A vessel. A delivery system for destruction. Every strike of my hammer felt like a heartbeat. Every spark was a memory. My mother telling me my hands were too rough for a girl. My father saying real achievements required a lab coat, not welding gloves. Chase mocking my scrap metal hobby. The trust I never asked for being taken from me. My signature forged. My life rewritten without my consent. I hammered harder. Sweat slid down my temple. Metal gave way beneath my will. This wasn't a box anymore. This was justice. When the final joint cooled, I polished the surface until it gleamed like obsidian and etched the Lawson crest into the lid, not as a tribute, but as a warning. Inside, I lined the base with charcoal suede, a perfect cradle for the evidence that would destroy them. When it was done, I stepped back, chest heaving. The first rays of sunrise filtered through the fogged windows, casting streaks of gold across the box. It looked ancient, regal, funeral-worthy, because that's exactly what it was. A coffin for the Lawson legacy. The winter charity gala always looked like something out of a billionaire's fever dream. This year was worse. The entire Chicago skyline Grand Hall glittered like a frozen palace, chandeliers dripping crystal tears, white roses arranged in 30-foot walls, violinists playing on a raised glass platform suspended above the crowd. Celebrities, politicians, investors, foundations, shareholders, doctors, donors. Every person who mattered in the Midwest power circuit was there. And the Lawson family, they glowed in it. My mother wore a gold gown covered in hand-sewn sequins, each one catching the light like a paparazzi flash. Her diamonds reflected the chandeliers in razor-bright shards. My father stood tall in the center of the hall, shaking hands with the board chair of the American Medical Registry. His smile rehearsed, his confidence unshakable. Chase worked the room like a senator campaigning for re-election, all blinding teeth and false charisma. Women laughed too loudly at his jokes. Men clapped his shoulder. Cameras flashed. Isabel, my sister-in-law, live-streamed the entire night on her influencer page, narrating the gala like it was her personal kingdom. No one noticed the courier slip through the side entrance. Dressed in a tailored black suit, white gloves, quiet briefcase. He checked in with security, who scanned the pre-approved code. Then he approached the auction table, velvet drapes, golden candlesticks, and placed the box carefully on the center pedestal labeled Lot 29, special donation from Harper LAWSON, people murmured. My mother perked up. Oh, how lovely, she trilled to a group of donors. Harper sent a little artisan piece, so sweet of her. Little, artisan, like my life's work was a cute hobby. The auctioneer tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present Lot 29, a handcrafted steel piece generously donated by Miss Harper Lawson. A handful of cameras turned. Chase smirked. You know, she actually makes decent money selling those, what does she call them? Emotional furniture. Laughter followed. My mother giggled like he'd said something clever. The auctioneer lifted the velvet cloth. A hush followed. Then confusion. Then something darker. The room shifted like a living animal sensing danger. Inside the box, the auctioneer read, is a sealed envelope, a digital presentation, and documents pertaining to, he trailed off. Brows furrowed. Whispers began. My father's face changed first. The color drained so fast he looked like he'd been carved from ice. No, he whispered under his breath. No, no. The auctioneer inserted the USB into the central media hub. The screens flickered. For a moment, the hall glowed with the comfortable blue of a loading screen. Then the first slide appeared. A balance sheet, but not any balance sheet. A hidden offshore account in the Caymans labeled LP Diagnostics Holding. $7 million transferred in 5 installments, all signatures visible. Then the next slide. Then the next. Clinical trial files unaltered. Patients harmed. Data falsified. Emails between the regulatory team and my father. The room erupted. Guests pulled out their phones. Staff froze mid-step. Half the violinists stopped playing while the others continued on in a discordant nightmare sound. My mother clutched her chest. Her bracelet snapped as she stumbled. A staff member barely caught her elbow before she fell. Chase lunged for the media hub, slipping, cursing, tripping over a decorative lantern, but a security guard blocked him. The crowd formed a circle, predators sensing the wounded. Isabel screamed into her live stream. Oh my God, babe, what is happening? My father grabbed the mic, voice cracking for the first time I can remember. This presentation is unauthorized. Please turn it off. The slides kept coming. Trust amendments with my name violently crossed out. Signatures forged. Shell company diagrams, drug trial fatalities, board manipulation. Emails. Remove HL from access permanently. Gasps, cries. A woman fainted. Someone cursed loudly from the back. My mother finally collapsed. Her gold gown pooled around her like molten metal. People rushed to her, but for the first time in her life, she was invisible in the chaos. Every eye was on the screens. Every whisper was venom. Every camera was recording. And I stood on the balcony level, hidden in the shadows of a marble column, watching the empire that rejected me crumble under the weight of its own rot. I wasn't smiling. Not yet. That came later. I reached the lakeside villa at 11:54 p.m. The place looked like a winter postcard. Frosted windows, icicles hanging like crystal daggers, warm golden lights flickering inside. My friends were already tipsy, slouched across the plush couches, arguing over which champagne to open next. "Harper," Juno called. "Is it done?" I slipped off my coat, tossed it over a chair, and nodded. She grinned. And then my phone began to vibrate. Once, twice, then nonstop. Chase, Isabel, my mother, my father. Their contact photos streaked across the screen. I let it ring. We walked outside, barefoot on the wooden deck overlooking frozen Lake Michigan. The air bit at my skin, sharp and clean. The wind carried the distant echoes of fireworks from the city. Behind me, Juno wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "Answer it," she said softly. "Put it on speaker." I did. My father's voice came through first, raw and unhinged. "Harper, what the hell have you done? Are you insane? Do you have any idea what you've caused?" I held the phone at arm's length, letting his rage unravel in the cold. My mother shoved her way into the audio. "Sweetheart, baby, listen, we can fix this, okay? We can say it was a glitch. Chase will take the blame publicly. We'll handle everything internally. Just come home, please." Chase barged in next, shouting, "You vindictive brat, you think exposing us makes you powerful. You think anyone will hire you now. You're done, Harper, do you hear me?" "Done." In the background, Isabel sobbed hysterically. "They're all recording us. Everyone's posting it. My sponsorship deals, my collabs. Harper, please, please take it down." Juno snorted beside me. "Good luck with that." My father roared over all of them. "Tell me where you are, now." I waited until the chaos on the other end burned itself out, until the screaming turned into ragged breathing, choked sobs, trembling silence. Then I lifted the phone to my lips. "Listen carefully," I said, voice steady as ice, "because this is the last time you will ever hear my voice." The line went dead quiet. I continued. "The minute you decided I was disposable, you signed your own death certificate. The minute you forged my name, you became criminals. And the minute you plotted to humiliate me publicly, you lost any right to call yourselves my family." My mother whimpered. "Harper, no," I said firmly. "You don't get to say my name." Wind howled across the frozen lake. "You built an empire on lies," I said. "I built a life on truth, and tonight the world finally saw the difference." Chase snarled. "We'll sue you, we'll ruin you." I laughed softly. "You've already tried. And you failed spectacularly." My father spoke one last time, voice stripped, desperate. "Was it all worth it, Harper, destroying your own bloodline?" I closed my eyes. "Yes." Then I hung up, powered down the phone, popped out the SIM card, and flicked it into the lake. It disappeared beneath a sheet of black ice with a tiny, perfect plink, swallowed by winter. Behind me, Juno lifted her champagne glass. "To the end of the Lawsons." I raised mine. "To the beginning of everything else." Fireworks erupted above the lake, brilliant gold tearing through the midnight sky. Their reflections shimmered on the frozen surface, splintering into shards of light. My old life cracked with them. My new one began. 4 days after the gala, I woke up to the blinding white of winter sunlight reflecting off the lake outside my villa's windows. My phone, my new phone, buzzed nonstop on the table beside me. It wasn't family. It was news alerts. Regulators, shareholders, whistleblower boards, investigative journalists, pharma watchdog accounts. Every headline seemed louder, harsher, heavier than the last. Lawson Pharmaceuticals under federal review. CEO Jonathan Lawson accused of hiding clinical trial data. Whistleblower leak exposes family financial scheme. Stock plummets 47% overnight. Shareholders demand emergency vote. My coffee mug trembled in my grip. Not from fear, from disbelief that it was actually happening. The empire that had dismissed me, mocked me, ignored me, was collapsing faster than anyone predicted. By noon, I learned the first domino had already fallen. The FDA issued an emergency halt on 3 Lawson drug distributions due to alleged data manipulation and patient safety concerns. The company's stock froze as the federal investigation expanded. By evening, the board called an emergency session, the kind without public notes, without press releases, without family, the kind where CEOs are quietly removed before the sprinkler system goes off. The next morning, financial news outlets confirmed it. Jonathan Lawson was placed on indefinite leave. A polite phrase meaning, "You're done. Pack your office or security will pack it for you." Chase lasted another 48 hours. Somehow, miraculously, my brother managed to set a record for shortest tenure as acting COO. After the scandal, creditors demanded a forensic audit. The audit uncovered something even I didn't know about. Chase had funneled nearly $900,000 into a consulting firm owned by a girl he met on Instagram. When the shareholders saw that, they didn't even bother with a formal meeting. They removed him by unanimous vote. The video leaked online, a shaky clip of Chase being escorted out of Lawson Tower, clutching a cardboard box filled with personal items, followed by paparazzi shouting questions. "Chase, did you hide the money? Chase, are you aware of the offshore accounts? Chase, is this because of your sister's evidence? Chase, did you forge her signature?" He shoved the cameras away, tripped on the curb, and face-planted into a snow pile. It went viral, for days. My mother didn't fare much better. The moment evidence of the trust fraud reached the charity boards she chaired, every one of them issued the same canned statement. "Donna Lawson has stepped down to focus on family matters," which meant she was fired. Political wives unfollowed her. Charity women removed her from group chats. Her name vanished from gala invitations like it had never existed. Her social circle disappeared overnight, the same way she disappeared any time I needed her growing up. By the end of the week, Isabel posted a crying apology video to her followers. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, begging for forgiveness and insisting she knew nothing about the Lawson crimes. She lost 5 sponsorships within 24 hours, 2 more after that, and her influencer management team dropped her entirely. Even the family mansion, the Whitestone estate that had been our fortress my whole life, didn't survive the month. Investor lawsuits piled higher than the holiday snow. Federal penalties came next, then back taxes, then breach of trust charges. Within 6 weeks, the mansion was listed for sale at a significant price adjustment due to urgent circumstances. Translation. They were desperate. The realtors didn't say it, but everyone knew. Homes tainted by scandal rot on the market. Buyers circled it like vultures picking at a carcass. My father aged 10 years in 6 weeks. His hair turned nearly white, his cheeks hollowed. His suit hung too loosely on him. My mother started wearing sunglasses indoors to hide swollen eyes and sleepless nights. Chase moved into a depressing apartment with peeling paint near O'Hare Airport, spotted by reporters taking his grocery bags into a building with flickering hallway lights. And every time the news showed them crumbling, I felt nothing. Not joy, not guilt, not shock, just peace. The kind of peace you get when something heavy is finally set down after years of carrying it alone. But the strangest part came 2 months later. An email, short, from a gallery in New York. "We saw your work featured in the whistleblower coverage. We would be honored to exhibit your steel sculpture collection. Please call if interested." At first, I thought it was a mistake. But then art bloggers started writing about me, not because of the Lawson scandal, but because someone zoomed in on the steel box I'd forged for the gala and asked, "Who made this masterpiece?" Suddenly, my website crashed from traffic. Collectors emailed me. Architects wanted commissions. My waitlist ballooned in days. The destruction of the Lawsons hadn't derailed my life. It had opened a door, one I'd been banging on since I was old enough to hold a hammer. And for once, I walked through it. New York hit me like a tidal wave. The gallery flew me out first class, my first time not being wedged between 2 strangers or crammed against a window. When I stepped into the city, I felt the hum of it in my bones. towering glass buildings, steam rising from the grates, taxi horns echoing down the canyon streets. It was alive in a way I had never been allowed to be. The gallery owner, Alina Marrow, met me at the entrance. She wore a tailored black coat and the kind of heels that ignored physics. "Harper," she said, shaking my hand, "your work is extraordinary." Words I'd spent my whole life wanting to hear from my own family. Instead, I heard them here from strangers who saw my value without needing proof. They offered me a contract on the spot, a 3-year exclusive exhibition agreement, a dedicated studio loft in Chelsea, material stipends, 2 metal forges, a staff assistant, a feature in 3 upcoming art magazines. I moved within a week. My new studio occupied the 12th floor of a converted warehouse overlooking the Hudson River. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the space in natural light. Cranes honked in the distance. Ships drifted by. Snowflakes brushed against the glass like soft whispers. Every morning, I brewed coffee, tied my apron, and walked to my anvil like it was the altar of a new religion. Metal bent for me, fire obeyed. Steel sang. My pieces grew bigger, bolder, taller. I built sculptures shaped like ruptured armor, molten towers, fractured crescents, reflections of every crack and weld in my own life. People didn't just buy them, they felt them. The gallery show sold out opening night. A museum placed an order. A collector from Dubai wanted a 12-foot installation. A tech CEO flew out specifically to meet me. I should have celebrated, maybe I did, but the moment that truly changed me wasn't the success, it was the arrival of a certified envelope. Thick, white, stamped with a Chicago law firm's logo. Sender, Jonathan Lawson. Even seeing his name made my skin prickle. I carried the envelope to my loft's balcony, the wind whipping my hair. Cars crawled below like tiny metallic insects. My hands didn't shake, not even a little. I didn't open it. Instead, I picked up a black permanent marker from my pocket, uncapped it, and wrote across the seal. "Refused, return to sender." Then I dropped it into the mail chute. No anger, no triumph, just a simple, final exhale. That was the last time he ever reached me. Winter deepened. New York turned quiet snow, swallowing the city's noise, frosting the fire escapes and rooftops. On the first real snow day, I loaded the biggest forge I'd ever used, a 45-foot industrial kiln built into the gallery's workshop. Inside were 30 pieces of my newest collection. Steel ribs like broken cages. Cracked pillars stitched together with gold leaf. A towering sculpture shaped like a flame turning inward. They were the truest things I had ever made. I shut the heavy door, set the heat, pressed start. The forge ignited with a deep, primal roar. Light glowed through the peepholes like molten stars. Heat rolled over me in waves. I stood there, coffee mug warm in my hands, watching fire transform raw metal into something stronger, harder, unrecognizable. And I realized, so was I. I wasn't the girl begging for approval in a mansion. I wasn't the daughter waiting for my mother's affection. I wasn't the shadow standing behind Chase's spotlight. I wasn't the placeholder the Lawsons pretended I was. I was something forged, something rebuilt, something new. As the forge crackled, I whispered into the empty studio, "You don't need their table when you've learned to build your own." Outside, snow kept falling, thick, soft, endless. Inside, the kiln roared, burning through the last traces of the life I'd left behind. The timer beeped hours later. I opened the forge, and there they were, sculptures glowing softly under the dim workshop lights. Perfect, strong, unbreakable. Just like me, I touched the warm steel of the tallest piece, its surface smooth, its welds sharp, its shadows long and beautiful. For the first time in my life, the future didn't scare me. It called to me, invited me, welcomed me. That was the moment Harper Lawson, the forgotten daughter, the dismissed artist, the family embarrassment, finally disappeared for good. And Harper, just Harper, began.